It's always one thing to know your craft, but then you have to have that idea. Otherwise you can't soar in the realm of ideas. There was never any debate for me in terms of what I wanted to do. And my cousins and that would be playing baseball and soccer out on the field, and I'd be sitting under a tree drawing. When I'm looking out at nature and I find a little place, and I actually start with crayon drawings, and I do them quite small, only 4 by 6 inches in a little sketchbook, and I redo them, same format, but then I start editing and removing things and paring it down, and that until it becomes my landscape. Shapes fascinate me, and I'll see in nature or in people the shapes they make.
So the original landscape is a reference for a landscape that you're creating in your head.
Exactly. It's a springboard.
Oh, that's great.
These sketchbooks, and I just sit out there with my crayons, and this is the size they are.
Well, yeah.
I put these marks here of the color I use so that I remember the process, because I layer them. In other words, if you look closely, this red is down underneath a lot of this stuff. I put the next color on top of it, and then what I do is essentially scratch with a penknife and expose what's below it, and I build this whole thing up that way.
Oh, I see.
So I have this reference here for later. But it starts out as a line drawing, just the shapes, and I think you can see the shapes here.
Right, yes.
Here's one. I've just started out, so you can see. Now there's going to be a blue sky here ultimately, but I'm going to scratch and expose some of this red down below, so that it gets that kind of luminosity. I'm not really like reproducing the sketch. That is just the rehearsal. Then when it gets to the stage of that scale, then I'm going to adjust the colors.
The shapes themselves are pretty solid by the time you get to the larger canvas.
Like my crayon sketches, this whole thing was just big shapes of pure color.
You really have a distinct style. You've developed this distinct style for yourself.
I really want to understand what's underneath, and even though you might not necessarily ultimately see it. And here it was just complete. I just couldn't believe it. I was totally bowled over. And I went immediately out to the San Francisco Art Institute simply because these guys were on the faculty. That was already ancient history at the Art Institute. I was the only figurative painter of the 15 graduate students, and boy did it test my mettle. But I've never really been interested in say, non-objective art.
Are the psychological aspects of your work, are they preconceived?
It just comes out by itself, this kind of glassy stillness. It almost looks like a stage set without any people on it, not any notion of human endeavors, and a kind of surreal world that I see in other people's work, like Edward Hopper, de Chirico, or Baltus, or even in films like Ingmar Bergman. I respond to those kind of things. I really don't consciously attempt to do that. It just happens.
Do you feel those things coming about during the process, though? Or is it something you see in there when the painting's near completion?
In the process, not at the beginning, but towards the middle and the end. So it's not a case after the fact I see this stuff that I'll go, oh wow, that's a pretty nice thing that's just happening right here. I'd like to think that I've got it all planned out. I start on the work, and something like that will reveal itself then. And I'll go, oh, that's pretty nice. And then I'll elaborate on it.
Right.
Maybe I'm my own worst enemy about thinking I've got it all planned out. Things happen in the act of painting as the work is evolving. You got to be under the tree when the apple falls. You got to be in the right place for this to happen. And there's a drama for me in these works, in the sense that something's going to happen here, but what is it? And you're going to just have to wait. I think of it like a stage set before the characters come onto the set. And I would love to do, the sets for an opera like David Hockney, because it definitely would be a large scale. Not only Arthur and Ernestine and their support, but also, Diebenkorn and his comments about my stuff. He didn't really mess around. He really got to the quick about my work. Great comments to make for me that were helpful. It was the first time with a critique with him. Okay, right away, no more Diebenkorns. You have to get your own images, your own ideas. That's not what you're here for. You're here to explore and investigate what you're about. Rockwoods in terms of being this little oasis, this little area that for me has become magical. Monet, who said what he created his gardens behind his house, and they became enchanted. And he spent the rest of his life essentially in his garden. But for me, you know, Rockwoods isn't a garden, it's nature. It's not chaos, but it's whatever is surviving, and it's a living kind of thing.
Thank you very much for your time and having us in your studio.
I really appreciate it, having the opportunity to talk about my work.